Welcome to the Critical Few Actions to Improve Your Business podcast. I'm John Downs and I'm here to help you cut through the overwhelm and prioritise what matters most to improve your business. Let's get started and discover the critical few actions that have the biggest impact. Today, I'd like to introduce you to Charles Pratt, who I met in my 2024 CEO Masterclass in Strategic Planning and Implementation. He is the CEO of Kinder Australia, a 40-year-old mining services business that has recently been acquired by private equity. Over the last year, I've been watching with admiration as Charles navigated the challenges and issues of presenting a business for sale and then negotiating for a successful completion in a way that fits all shareholders while positioning the business for future success. Charles, welcome.
Good morning, John. Pleasure to be with you.
And it's fantastic to see you down by the seaside. That looks like the Mornington Peninsula to me.
It is. It's a lovely place, and it's my happy place. I'm very lucky today there's no wind.
Isn't it fantastic? So, Charles, whilst we're going to talk about the insider's view of selling to private equity, that journey didn't start in the last 18 months. It's a journey that started over 5 years ago when the founders realised that they needed to prepare the family business for exit. So tell me a little bit about Charles Pratt and how you came into the business and then ultimately became CEO.
Yeah, thanks, John. That journey began all the way back in 2004 after I finished studying engineering. And it's the one and only job I've had in the industry, so to speak. And I started off as a sales engineer and I was given a company car and basically told, here's your box of tricks and off you go and see how you go. And it's been a mammoth journey. It's been so exciting, very rewarding. I love the place. I love the products and I love the industry. So I've had a great time and had lots of success along the way.
And so what sort of products were you selling at the time?
Yeah, so I still remember it was a little, one of those silver Bunnings boxes that Neil gave me. It used to fall apart on the conveyor belt when you arrived at an airport terminal. And it was full of some plastic conveyor rollers. We had some innovative skirting designs. We had some brush cleaning products and some spiral rollers.
Right. Oh, okay. And Charles, when your founders decided to prepare for exit, they did a couple of very smart things. The first was to promote you to CEO from a sales role. But what else did they do that set the business up for success?
Yeah, so they were very forward-thinking people, both Neil and Christine, and they recognised that to be able to successfully sell the business, they needed to first of all exit themselves from the business and, in effect, make themselves redundant. And I think that's a challenging process for anybody to go through, especially when you're so passionate about the business that you've created and work so hard to develop. But it was successful, and I'll never forget Neil Kinder always said to me that the ultimate sale that we will make one day is selling the business. We achieved that finally.
It'll be the biggest single asset sale, no doubt.
That's right. I was telling Peng Wei, our project engineer, that unfortunately he's been surpassed in the order book value of project sales.
Okay, so you trumped him completely.
We trumped him. So he's got a high bar now.
Not that you're competitive. So,
no.
And I remember you saying something about, one of the things that that happened when you were made CEO is that despite the fact that you'd been such a successful person in engineering sales, that you're actually forbidden from participating in sales.
Yeah, and I struggled with that because I love it. I love talking to people. I love sales. I've been in sales my whole life. Ever since I could walk or talk, I think I was selling something. And I found that tough, but I don't think I'm ever going to let that go. And, I'm mindful of the fact that I think the intentions were good. I think they recognized very good at sales, but they also, what they wanted me to do was focus on the bigger picture, which is what they had to do. Is what Neil Kinder did when he employed me 20 years ago. He was the face of the company. He was the salesperson of the company. And he recognized that he needed to, back in 2004, focus on the brand and the structure of the business and the marketing of the business that he was always very passionate about, but he was a little bit hamstrung by being the salesperson driving around promoting the products. So there was a transition from Neil to myself and the transition now the baton needs to be passed to the next team. But I'm going to be a CEO with dirty hands. I'm back out in the field, and I think to strike a balance I never want to lose that. I love it too much, and that's where the innovation comes from. If you don't see the problems, talk to the customers, and play with the products or the conveyors, you are not going to be able to innovate. You can't innovate behind a desk.
You've got to be in front of the customer. You've got to see and love their problems as much as they do. I think this really shows some great foresight and business acumen for Neil and Christine to start this transition really early, because it created a track record for the business being completely independent of its founders when it ultimately came for the sale. And that is actually one of the things that actually makes it saleable. In the meantime, they earned well as you traded the business exit ready, as I call it, for many years. Tell me, what were some of the things that you put in place that really helped lift the performance of the business during your last 5 years?
Yeah. So our focus on innovation, and when I talk about innovation, I'm not just talking about from an engineering standpoint, talking about innovation across the business. Now that might be within our SAP ERP system. It might be within our accounts department or our warehouse department. We never wanted to focus on what everybody else was doing. I don't believe that's sustainable. It's a very quick race to the bottom if you do that. And that's not something we started 5 years ago. That's something we started 40 years ago, bringing technology to the market and outperforming our competitors. And you can only do that if you've got something unique, different, value adding. So that's where the focus has been. And I believe that has enabled us to, have a future sustainable, secure, recurring revenue stream, which enables a great, secure place of employment for all our people.
Yeah. And as a business, Kinder performs with a high EBITDA compared to most medium-sized businesses in the market. And, that's a real testament to what you've achieved. Well done.
Good. Yeah. I was a bit surprised. I was somewhat insulated, working in the same company for 20 years. You don't really get to see the other side of the fence. But when you are selling a company, you do learn more about what the average EBITDAs are. And yeah, so we do perform very well.
If you really want to kick off your strategic planning and work in a supportive environment with other CEOs and leaders, the CEO Masterclass in Strategic Planning and Implementation is for you. This 10-month small group course helps you craft your strategic plan, present it to a group of peer investors, and develop a habit of monthly implementation. Our waitlist is open now at CriticalFewActions.com.au. So before we get on to the decision to put the business onto the market, you've been in the CEO Masterclass over the last 10 months. Tell me, how have you found it and how has it helped you?
Well, it's been awesome. Absolutely love working with you, John. And I remember our introduction, we hit it off very quickly. It's been an awesome journey, and I was in a position whereby we had lots of things happening, and I'll never forget you saying when we first started the CEO course in the first introductory meeting, you mentioned that you would encourage us all to just turn up, rock up, no matter how busy you are. We've all got a lot on our plate, but if you turn up, things will happen. And that's how we actually met.
And how's the Masterclass helped you develop as a CEO?
Yeah, so at Kinder, before meeting you, John, we've developed our own strategic plan each year for more than 10 years. We meet together as a company and come up with the plan. We've used external facilitators to help manage that process. And so it was fascinating to learn another method of creating and implementing a strategic plan. It's amazing. There are so many ways you can skin a cat. And I love participating in programs like this because it does enable you to remove yourself from inside your business, take yourself outside, look back in, and you can be critical of your own place and yourself and the way you operate, and you meet a lot of other people with lots of other wonderful ideas. So that's a real benefit.
Mm. And you assessed the business using the organisation performance and value diagnostic while you were going through the sales process. How did you find that? And what was the most important insight you took away from the OPV?
Yeah, so I found the most fascinating difference I recognised very quickly that the journey that you took us on was almost in a reverse way compared to our own. So we worked out where we wanted to be down the road and then figure out how we were going to get there. And, you're always talking about, well, how are we going to celebrate little Johnny's birthday and how are we going to do it? What's that going to look like? And that was quite different to how we conducted our own strategic plan. And I won't forget the picture of a horse looking back.
Yeah.
And that is so important. I can look back now, retrospectively, that our own strategic plans were fantastic. There was posters. The process was great. What we didn't do as well in the past was the implementation of the strategic plan and making sure that we met monthly and followed up on the actions. So your process helped us to formalize that.
Fantastic. So tell me about the decision to put Kinder on the market.
It was Neil and Christine's decision. I've been a shareholder since 2009, a minority shareholder, and Neil tapped me on the shoulder possibly 2 years ago and said, we're going to sell the company. And I wasn't surprised by that at all. None of us are going to get out of here alive, and you can't take some things with you. And I always knew that ultimately we would sell the company. It was not a shock, not a surprise. I couldn't afford to buy it, however. It was too big. And so I remember Neil saying to me, are you surprised? And I said, no, I'm not at all. So that was an interesting day. Yeah.
And tell me about the sales process. How did you manage that process? Did you use advisors and how did you navigate that? How long did it take?
Yeah, we used our
Walk me through it.
external accounting firm and we set up an advisory board. And as CEO, I reported to the advisory board and they introduced us to potential acquirers. And, very quickly we realized that, there was interest from private equity firms. There was interest from within the industry. But out of respect to me, Neil and Christine recognized that I didn't want to sell my shares. I wanted to grow my shareholding in the company, and the private equity structure allowed for that to happen.
And so how did the process go?
Yeah, so over the last 2 years, I had to pitch the business for sale to more than 10 different companies, had to develop a growth plan. We met people that liked us. We met people that we liked. We met people we didn't like. And ultimately, we ended up finding a PE firm that we all liked.
Yeah.
And that process, took some time. And the challenging thing for me was to stay focused and not let the company down by being distracted. That was the biggest challenge. Yeah, because it is
dealing
a big
with
process.
10 buyers must have taken a fair amount of your every week for the last 2 years.
Yeah, that's
Let
right.
alone the due diligence process.
That's right. The due diligence process was intense, and I was warned about that by lots of people. And there were multiple times when you just thought it was never going to end,
Yeah.
and I had to keep a very open mind about it, and I had to stay positive, knowing that ultimately we will get there, and never say die. Yeah, you just
So
got to
how
keep
much time did it take
whacking the
for you?
ball.
How much time did it actually take up?
Oh, significant. It was almost like having two jobs, and rocking up to your CEO Masterclasses was like a third job. So I was wearing a lot of hats, but I think that comes with the job. And you're not going to enjoy being a CEO if you're not prepared to, get involved and manage multiple situations like that.
Yeah.
So you have to enjoy it. You have to love it, and then it's easy. If you don't like what you're doing, it's not going to be rewarding. And I think time has gone more quickly over the last 18 months than it ever has in my life before.
Yeah.
And that's because it has been fun.
And really intense as well. So
Yeah,
what did
absolutely.
you learn from the process? What were the things perhaps that you thought were essential to a successful outcome?
Yeah. So the big one is, when you meet potential acquirers, you get to hear from them what they see as valuable in your business or in a business that they would like to buy. And that was something I'd never experienced before. And what most companies are looking for is a risk-free investment, but it's not like buying a house. So the risk-free investment is you want to buy a company that has sustainable future recurring revenue.
Yeah.
And we were lucky that we had just been, naturally focused on that for 40 years. Even whilst we didn't call it that's what we did, and that in our ethos. So yeah, that was fascinating to see what boxes you had to tick for companies to be interested in acquiring you.
Are you looking to pinpoint the areas that will make the biggest impact on your business? Check out the Organisation Performance and Value Diagnostic. This powerful tool lets you evaluate your business on multiple facets and provides email reminders to keep you on track. Head over to criticalfewactions.com.au and get started now. What were the other ones that were sort of the top of mind for you?
Yeah, so the structure of the organisation, the companies are interested to know about, the tenure of the employees and the net promoter scores and the culture of the organisation. And yeah, so there's I had to move a folder full of documents the other day into another space, and I saw all the files that were created through the process, and it was mind blowing, the amount of documents. And you're talking legal DD, financial DD. It's a real interrogation of your space, but it was always very important to stay very positive about that. The questions that you had to always justify why the questions were being asked.
Yeah. And it can feel both invasive and intensive. And if you adopt the approach that you're going to enjoy it, then that works for you. Otherwise, you could actually become, I suspect, quite defensive about it. You're really being picked on.
Yeah, that's right. So you need to stay open-minded about it. When I first heard that, private equity would be an option for us, I knew nothing about private equity. In fact, the only thing I knew about private equity was all the horrible things people would say about private equity. But what I realized that those people that were saying those things had never dealt with private equity. It was the big ugly beast that nobody knew about, but nobody liked. And the first thing I did was watch a whole lot of YouTube videos about private equity. And I stopped watching them after a while because they were all so horrible. And then read a few books about it and found some success stories. And you could either focus on the negatives or focus on the positives. But I've always been a glass half full kind of guy. Yeah. And, that's, as you say, you got to turn up, you got to rock up, and you get a lot more out of life saying yes than you do saying no.
I think that's something that we both share. So how did the shareholders manage themselves to have a united front in that process? Because, the majority shareholders, the founder obviously had their objectives and their reasons for selling were quite fundamentally different from yours.
Yeah, that's right. There was a huge amount of trust that was placed on me throughout the entire process, because I was in a very unique position, very challenging position, where I was in charge of pitching and managing the entire sales process of the company, but I also wanted to buy the company.
Yeah.
So I wanted to sell something and buy it at the same time. And that came with its own set of challenges. And, at times there were some, really intense moments, but I played a very straight bat.
Yeah.
And we all got through it, and everybody won. And I remember having a very frank, open, candid conversation with the owner of the accounting firm when he was telling me about the new advisory board that was being set up. And I sketched it on a piece of paper, and I said to him that it looks a bit like I'm outnumbered here. And, I said to him, everyone has to win at this.
Yeah.
And I just kept following that, and that it worked.
Yeah. And as you said, you were dealing with 10 potential acquirers. Tell me a bit about the shortlisting process. How did that work?
Yeah. So I was lucky. I didn't have to find those. They were presented to me by our accountant. So the meetings were set up. I had Teams meetings initially. And then if there was interest on both sides, we had face-to-face meetings. Then, information requests were sent through, data was exchanged, exclusivity NDAs were signed. And so we had to go through that process probably more than 10 times to find the one that everybody liked. Yeah. As I said before, some Neil and Christine liked and I didn't like. Some I liked, but they didn't like. Everyone had ultimately ended up liking the final one.
Yeah. Yeah. And once you figured out which was the winner, was it as simple as just banking a fat check?
No, I wish. That it was an enormous process, but I do, looking back, I did thoroughly enjoy it. I learned a lot of new things. I learned a lot of new words. It was absolutely intense. And there was a lot of money spent on both sides to get the deal aligned on all sides.
Any learnings during that process?
I think if I did it again, there wouldn't be a lot that I would change, because I don't think, looking back now, we made a lot of mistakes. There was a lot of money and a lot of time spent, but it was all valuable. I think, and the book I read about private equity spoke about someone's journey about selling a business multiple times, and they recognized that what they first thought about contractors and analysts and whatnot, they didn't see the value initially, but in the end, they saw the value in all these contractors. So I always kept an open mind about all the money being spent, ultimately knowing that in the end, it was all going to provide value.
Yeah. And how did the completion process then work? What were the key issues there?
That was very interesting and very more complicated for myself, I believe, because, I had to sign off on warranties as a seller, even though I rolled over 100% of my equity and I was a buyer at the same time. And so that was more challenging for me to wrap my head around the dynamics of that and the responsibilities as a director of the company. Less complicated for my business partners who were exiting, and less complicated for the other investors. On the buy side, there was obviously some comfort knowing that I too was a buyer, and therefore they knew I wasn't going to buy a dead duck.
Yeah, you were fully committed.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the completion, I had envisaged something more glamorous, and I had envisaged, champagne and oysters and caviar. But in the end, I was sitting on the couch with my dog. My wife and kids were away, and I was signing a 100-page DocuSign agreement whilst on the couch with my dog. And I had...
You didn't even get to pull out the blog pen with a flourish.
No,
and then show it up to the masses.
That's right. I had envisaged that we'd all be in a room together and we'd all be shaking hands and all be celebrating, from the sell side, the buy side. But the world has changed.
It certainly has.
The world
at least you had your dog for comfort.
I did. I was looking for it. I remember asking Amber, my Hungarian Whistler, whether she would witness the contract. But she didn't have an email address, so I couldn't send her the document. So I had to ring a neighbour and get it sorted. And everybody was ringing me. They were worried I wasn't going to be able to find a witness.
Oh dear! Oh well, you could have always called me. No problem.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's common in acquisitions is the issue of warranties and tax implications and those sorts of things. How did that sort of work out?
Yeah, that we navigated our way through that, and I think it was very helpful for everyone knowing that I was a buyer and a seller. If I was only a buyer, both sides would have question marks about some of the warranty items, and unlike a house that degrades over a period of time and then you spend a whole lot of money renovating in one hit, a business is continually evolving. There are moving parts in the business that you're constantly tweaking, and there are agreements that are in draft format with suppliers and customers, and through the finalisation, legal DD, preparing the shareholders agreement and the share sale agreement, and every time I went to work and changed something, I needed to disclose that, and then have the legal team update the warranty section, because we needed to play a very straight bat, because I was going to be responsible for day one, anything that I had signed off on the 30th of April.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So now the deal's gone through. Where are you at now?
Well, we're 21 days in and counting, and it's flying.
21 days into the 100-day plan?
That's right. Yeah.
Everyone's got a 100-day plan.
That's right. And we were talking, is it 100 working days or 100 calendar days? No.
No.
I'm all about, as you said, I'm very competitive, so I'm all about hitting hitting the numbers, hitting the targets. So we needed to narrow that down. So a big one for me is getting back out there, getting back in front of the conveyor, getting back in front of the customers, getting back out alongside our people, helping develop the products, develop the customer experience, and growing the team. And we're already back out there enjoying it. It's awesome. But there's lots of changes, as you can imagine.
Well, I guess with private equity, they've got a pretty high set of expectations around how the business is going to grow, how its profitability, so that at some point they're going to be able to exit their investment. They don't make any money until they do. So how's that changing things for you?
Yeah, so the expectations of growth are significant, and we as a company are used to that. You had to grow, you had to change, you had to innovate, otherwise you died. And we doubled our business in the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
That's why the PE firm was interested in our company, because we had a proven track record of delivering the growth that they require and aspire to. So we had a town hall meeting the other day and made it very clear to the team that there is going to be a big focus on growth. But I'm mindful of the fact that nobody can just grow for the sake of growing. You need to grow sustainably, and you need the right things to enable you to grow. And if you don't have the right people on the bus, you don't have the right products on the bus or on the trailer behind, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
So you've got to package all that up together, and you've got to maintain a healthy culture in the business too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess that organic growth alone won't be sufficient.
No, there are multiple ways to grow a business. Ours has been organic over the last 40 years, and that is going to be different over the next 3 to 5 years. We've got targets in mind to acquire through the supply chain, whether that be the customers, distributors, competitors, suppliers. We want to all get on the same team together and buy and build, so they say in PE, and bolt on strategic acquisitions, and then turn our 4 or 5 times the size of the company today.
It's going to be one hell of an exciting ride, Charles.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to it.
Fantastic. So when you step back now and look over the whole process, what's the most important thing that you had to do really well?
Stay calm.
Yeah.
Don't lose your cool in the heat of the moment, and you needed to do that, because there were I was being pulled left, right, up, down, inside out, and looking back, and people reminded me that throughout the process, they were amazed at how cool and calm I stayed throughout the process. You've got in a meeting the other day, someone apologized for pushing me a bit hard, and they were worried that, I might get offended by that. And I said to them, "You're going to have to try harder, mate." Yeah. So that was a big focus of mine, not to get stressed through the process, and managing that. Yeah. That was a focus.
Yeah. And were there any clear things that you felt you had to guard yourself against in the process, either on behalf of yourself or on behalf of the organization?
Yeah, there was, because naturally, and I identified that very early on, his interests were not aligned, but you have to accept that. You couldn't let that frustrate you. You couldn't let that annoy you or conflict myself in the way that I went about things. And it was a balancing act.
Yeah.
And that's why I had to play a very straight bat. And in the end, there were a lot of balls coming over the fence, and you couldn't let them go through to the keeper, and you couldn't put them in the slips. You had to hit them straight back.
Yeah. That's actually really interesting, because when you think about it, you're actually transitioning from conflict to alignment. You've got yourself, and you've also got your founders. In some ways, there's a conflict there because they're looking to exit the business. You're looking to exit the business, but actually be re-employed by the business, and also to reinvest in the business. And at the same time, you've got buyers who are looking at the business and saying, okay, how do I get the cheapest price for how do I get the best value for the money I'm going to spend on this investment? And therefore there's tension there about, okay, so how do I beat the price down? How do I actually set an effective price? And then as you go through the process, you've actually got to end up with hand in glove alignment, whereby the buyer is your partner as CEO to actually grow the business for a future exit yet again. So that transition probably turns you into a bit of a head case, because all of a sudden you've actually got conflict or conflicting interests at the very start of the process, whereby you actually need to end up with this really hand in glove, amenable, co-supportive arrangement and
Yeah.
relationship where you're all actually working together for the next common goal.
Yeah. And I've thought about this a bit, and I think being a middle child gave me the ability to reason and, diplomatically resolve tensions. And I enjoy that. I'm a peacemaker. I'm a deal maker. And, ultimately, yeah, you got to navigate those challenges, but I love it. That's what I do very well. And it needed to happen. If I was going to stick around, it absolutely needed to happen. If I was going to move on, or, sell all my shares, it would have played completely different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because then it would have been very much a cut and run. Just give us a check and you
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah. But I'm 44 years old, and I don't think about retiring. I love what I do, and I'm going to do it for a lot longer yet.
Much fun to be had.
Too much fun to be had. But not enough hours in the day.
No, absolutely, Charles.
Yeah.
So, Charles, when you think about your peers as founders and CEOs of medium-sized businesses, what critical few actions do you think they should start tomorrow if they did nothing else?
Yeah, focus on what's going to sustain what they want in the future, and figure out how that's going to be achieved. Looking back, that's what we did. Have a diverse customer base, diverse product base. Don't have all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah.
That's a big one.
And that really actually covers so much. It's not just your customers, it's not just your industry, but it's not just the people either. And it's not
Yeah.
just your suppliers and your supply chain.
Yeah. And then I think what you have to do is constantly evolve your critical few. If you do come up with a critical few things and that's it, that's not going to work. You got to come up with a critical few every day, or a critical few once a month, or a critical few each year. And the scale of each one of those is different. But you have to constantly reinvent yourself. Otherwise, the competition is going to come in and do what you did yesterday and absolutely destroy you. And that's why I get a kick out of it, being an engineer and having a passion for design and not doing what everybody else is doing, pushing the boundaries. And hats off to Neil and Christine Kinder. They never put a leash on me. They allowed a safe space and backed myself and the company to do very adventurous things in our space with our products. And we've all benefited from it.
Absolutely. And I guess if you go up sort of a level and look down on the business, one of your critical few for many years was actually to focus on building that sustainable growth and those sustainable relationships with clients. And then and the other critical few, I guess, was to actually build a business that was bigger and independent than the founders. And over the last 24 months, apart from leading the business, your critical few is to actually get it through this exit gate. So,
Yeah,
Charles,
absolutely.
as always, it's been an absolute delight to chat with you. Thank you so much for your time and your insights, your candor, and in fact, also for your friendship. I really look forward to watching your career develop successfully in the next environment.
Thanks very much, John. Been an absolute pleasure. Enjoyed it.
Fantastic. Thanks for listening to the Critical Few Actions podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and grab the downloadables from the show notes. And if you found this episode helpful, I'd really appreciate it if you share it with your peers and your team. Stay focused and take action. The Critical Few Actions podcast, including show notes and links, provides general information only and is not individualised business advice, nor can it be relied upon as such. You must take responsibility for your own advice, decisions, and actions.